Okay, good afternoon class. So welcome to the video recording for our discussion in chapter number 9. So this is the final chapter included in your finals. So we will be talking about the mechanism of disease causation. Okay, so included in this chapter will be the factors that increases the ability of your bacteria to invade the host. So, kasama dyan, di ba? Ano yung mga special abilities ng mga microorganism or bacteria in order for them to invade a human host. And then we also included in this chapter, we have here how your bacterial pathogens damage the host cell. So, ano yung effect, no? What mechanisms are they using to damage the host cells? Okay, so we will be discussing right now the first part. Okay, so this is the first part. And then meron tayong another video for the second part since medyo mahaba itong chapter number 9. Okay, let's begin. Okay. So you have here chapter outline, included natin definition of terms. Okay, so yun na. Nasabi ko na rin, no, before. Learning objectives. At the end of the chapter, you're expected to explain how pathogens penetrate host defenses and discuss how bacterial pathogens damage host cells. Okay? So let's start with the definition of terms. The first term here is infestation. Now remember class, infestation is different from infection. But the similarity between the two, both of them are caused by pathogens, okay, or microorganisms that causes disease to its host. But the difference between the two, your infestation is caused by larger, more than single cell organism. So, hindi siya microorganism. Okay? So, ano ang mga nagko-cause nitong infestation? Infestation is usually caused by parasites, okay? Parasitic diseases. Okay? When you say infestation, it is a parasitic disease caused by animals such as your arthropods. Maalala ba ano ang arthropods? So, itong example natin dito is your mites, your ticks, yung lice, okay, sa ulo. And then you also have worms. Okay? So, yan ang mga causative animals niya, arthropods and worms. So, kapag infestation caused by parasitic agents but they are not microorganisms, instead, okay, they are not invisible to the naked eye. They are visible to the naked eye. Yan ang pinagkaiba niya. Okay? So, you will exclude in the infestation, hindi mo isali yung mga conditions that are caused by protozoa, fungi, bacteria, and viruses. So, hindi yan sila. Ang mga nakakos ng mga protozoans, fungi, bacteria, and viruses, hindi infestation, kung rather infection. Okay, ang the infections are caused by microorganisms. On the other hand, infestation is still caused by parasitic agents but they are not microscopic. Okay, they are macroscopic. So, magkaiba ang infestation sa infection. Okay? So, I hope you are taking down notes. Next, let's go to pathogenicity or genicity. So, your pathogenicity is the ability to cause disease by overcoming the defenses of a host. So, kapag nagkaroon ng pathogenicity, meaning the pathogen has the ability to overcome the immune defense of a certain host. Okay? So, it is the ability to cause disease. Many organisms are pathogenic under certain conditions, but some are almost always pathogenic. So, ang pathogenicity natin will vary depending on the microorganism. Most organisms hindi sila ganun ka pathogenic, while the others are always pathogenic. So it will the level of pathogenicity will differ when it comes to the specific type of microorganism or organism that is causing the disease. Okay? For example, you have chickenpox and flu that are almost always pathogenic. However, photosynthetic and nitrogen fixing bacteria are never pathogenic. Okay? So, ito yung example natin ng infestation. Okay? Caused by insects. And then, we also have here example naman ng ating chickenpox. Okay? Always pathogenic ang chickenpox. Next. Let's go with virulence. When you say virulence, this is the degree of pathogenicity, or it is the degree or extent, okay, of causing diseases. Okay? Now, a virulent organism is one that usually produces a violent and severe disease, often leading to death. So, kapag virulent yung isang disease class, this is an extreme. Mayroon siyang nilalabas na extreme symptoms and signs or severe disease, and later on, pwede siyang mag-cause ng death if hindi naagapan. Now, for example, you have your chickenpox and common cold viruses. So, both of these, while they are clearly pathogens, they are not considered to be virulent kasi hindi naman nakakakos ng death itong chickenpox and common cold natin. Okay? On the other hand, you have your Yersinia pestis, the etiological agent for bubonic plague, and your Ebola virus that are considered to be virulent. Kasi nga, both of these can cause death. So, para hindi kayo malito, kapag nagko-cause ng death, okay, there's a possibility that a patient can die because of this type of disease. That disease is virulent. If hindi naman nagko-cause ng disease, hindi nagko-cause ng death yung disease, it is not virulent. Okay, so the virulence of a disease. Now, okay, so again kapag etiological agent, kapag sinabing etiological agent, this means this is the microorganism that is causing the disease. Okay? So, next, let's go to avirulent organisms. Now, an avirulent organism is the term used to describe a mutant or a virulent pathogen that has lost its ability to produce a disease. So, meaning, kapag sinabi mong a virulent organism, it does not have the capability to cause disease. Okay? It is not pathogenic. Okay? Not capable of causing disease. Ang tawag mo dyan is a virulent. So, ito sila class, nanggaling sila, parang evolution sila, nanggaling sila from microorganisms or organisms that before can cause disease, but since newer generations na sila, nawalan sila ng capability to cause disease. Okay? So, you have those are the 4 terms that you should remember in this chapter. Okay, so here is an example of your bubonic disease or bubonic plague. Ayan siya. Okay, this is during, I think, 14th century up to the 19th century. Okay, next. Let's go with the factors that contribute to the ability of bacteria to invade a host. So, ito na yung mga factors natin that will increase the capability of your bacteria to enter and invade the body of a host. Okay, let's start. Now, okay class, although some pathogens can cause damage on the surface of the tissues, diba? Kahit na yung ibang mga pathogen natin, kahit na hindi sila nakakapasok sa deeper layers of the tissues of the body, they can still cause diseases. Okay? But when you say pathogen, okay, most of them, they must penetrate the tissues to cause disease. Iilan-ilan lang yung mga pathogenic microorganisms natin na nakakaapekto sa surface, because most of them, they will need to enter, there is a need to enter the body of a host in order for them to replicate, to grow and develop and multiply inside the body of the host. So karamihan sa mga pathogens natin, they need to enter, okay, inside the body of the host. Now, the following are the factors that contribute to the ability of bacteria to invade a host. So, ito yung, kumbaga pa, kapag soldier sila, no, ito yung mga ginagamit nilang weapon in order to invade our body. Number 1, ito yung shield nila, no, para maalala nyo na mabuti. Capsule, when you say capsule, ginagamit silang parang shield nitong mga bacteria natin to invade a host. Okay? So, some bacteria form an organized glycocalyx, if you remember, called a capsule around their cell walls, which increases the virulence of the species. If you remember, we already tackled about the capsule, diba? They are made up of your glycocalyx. So, kapag merong capsule, mas matindi yung effect ng bacteria kapag they are covered with a capsule. Why? Because first of all, your capsule actually helps resist host defenses by interfering with phagocytosis. So, ano nga yung phagocytosis natin? Diba? That is the process in which certain cells of your body will engulf and destroy microbes. So, kinakain nila yung mga microorganisms. And this is the example of that. This is your white blood cells engulfing a population of bacteria. Okay? So, ganyan yung nangyayari sa phagocytosis. They are actually engulfing or eating the bacteria alive. Okay? Now, when the bacteria contains or is enveloped by your capsule class, they will resist, no, phagocytosis. So, paano nangyayari yun? Because your capsule actually, meron silang what is called this chemical nature. Okay? There is a chemical nature that prevents the phagocytic cell from adhering to your bacterium. So, itong capsule natin, meron silang chemical that will prevent the sticking, no, or the adhering of your, for example, white blood cells doon sa bacterial cell. Okay? So, meron silang chemical nature that prevents that from happening. Now, okay, we have here, if the human body produces antibodies against the capsule, this can allow destruction of the bacteria by phagocytosis. So, kaya nga, there is a need for us to actually produce antibodies that will, what? That will fight, okay, the capsule of your bacteria. So, kapag meron kang, once na nakilala na, once your immune system actually recognizes the capsule or the bacteria enveloped by a capsule, there is a possibility na, na siya, no, it will be destroyed. So, malaking tulong yung antibodies natin, the production of the antibodies in immune defense. Okay, let's continue. So, is this still recording? Okay. Just to be sure. Okay, next. Okay, so we have here Streptococcus pneumoniae, which owes its pathogenicity to the presence of a capsule. So, yung pagiging pathogenic ng inyong Streptococcus pneumoniae is dahil doon sa presence ng capsule na naka-envelope sa kanya. For example, you have here, okay, strains without a capsule are avirulent. Again, they do not, when you say avirulent, they do not cause disease. Now, strains with strains ng Streptococcus kapag yung Streptococcus pneumoniae natin, meron siyang thin capsule, then it will cause mild pneumonia lang. Pero kapag thick capsule yung naka-envelope sa Streptococcus pneumoniae bacterial cells, then this will cause a severe or fatal pneumonia. Okay? So, nakadepende yung virulence ng inyong nakadepende yung pathogenicity ng inyong Streptococcus pneumoniae sa kapal or sa presence ng capsule. Okay? Other bacteria which need a capsule to aid them in causing disease include your Klebsiella pneumoniae, your Haemophilus influenzae, your Bacillus anthracis, and Yersinia pestis. So, ano ba ang mga sakit nito? Your Klebsiella pneumoniae class, it causes pneumonia and meningitis. So, dalawa yung disease na nakakos niya, pneumonia and meningitis. While your Haemophilus influenzae produces also meningitis, pwede ring bacteremia, pwede ring pneumonia. Okay, so tatlo yung nakakos niya na disease, meningitis, bacteremia, and pneumonia. On the other hand, your Bacillus anthracis, okay, ang capsule na Bacillus anthracis, ang nakakos niya na disease is anthrax. Okay, anthrax. While your Yersinia pestis class, so ito siya yung causative agent ng bubonic plague natin. So, yun nabanggit kanina. Okay? So, you have actually, ano ba yung bubonic plague? Kasi always siya na, always paulit-ulit siya na nababanggit. When you say bubonic plague class, this is a plague that originates from a rodent or flea bite. So, nanggaling siya sa mga flea or rodent bite. So, kapag nakagat ka, pwede kang magkaroon ng bubonic plague. Now, there are 3 types of bubonic plague. Number 1, ang unang tawag sa kanya is yung Black Death. Okay? Your bubonic plague is actually known as the Black Death Black Death during the 14th century. And then, pangalawang ulit niya, tinawag na siya na Justinian Plague. Okay? Justinian Plague. Okay? Justinian Plague. So, nangyari yan noong 16th to 18th century. And then, you also have Modern Plague. Okay? So, ito na yung ngayon. Okay, kapag nagkaroon ka ng infection caused by Yersinia pestis, ang tawag na dyan is modern plague. So, those are the 3 types of your bubonic plague, depending on the date that they occurred. So, yung iba-iba kasi ang tawag sa kanila, or iba-iba ang tawag sa bubonic plague ninyo, depending on the year that it occurred. Okay, so nanggaling siya again sa kagat ng daga. So, wala na ito ngayon masyado, di ba? Hindi na siya masyadong what do you call this? Hindi na siya ganun kadalas na nangyayari in the modern times. Why? Because mas mabuti na yung hygiene. Our hygiene right now at the present is better than the hygiene back then in 14th century. Kasi noong 14th century, the rodents are everywhere. Okay? Hindi sila masyadong ganun ka galing in cleaning the decaying bodies of the people, kaya mas dumarami yung nai-infect. Okay? So, that's the bubonic plague. Now, however, let's go back here. However, not all encapsulated bacteria are pathogenic. So, hindi naman lahat ng may capsule na bacteria causes disease. And virulence is not always related to the presence of a capsule. Meron tayong mga bacteria class na kahit walang capsule, they can cause virulent diseases. Okay? Diseases that can lead to death kahit na walang capsule yung bacteria. Okay? Okay, let's go to the second factor that contributes to the bacterial invasion. Number 1 is number 2, components of the cell wall. Okay, so various components of the cell wall can contribute to the virulence of the bacteria. So, how do this happen? By containing chemical substances. So, sometimes the cell wall of the bacteria contains chemical substances that may help them in increasing their virulence. Okay? And the first one is protein. Okay? One example of a protein that helps your bacteria in invading a host is the M protein. Okay? M proteins built into the cell wall of your Streptococcus pyogenes. Okay? Ang Streptococcus pyogenes ninyo, they contain in their cell wall the M proteins. Ano ba itong M protein? Your M protein class is actually, they can be found on the cell surface of your Streptococcus, sa surface ng cell, and pwede rin silang makita sa fimbriae ng bacterial cells ninyo. Now, they are very unique because they are actually heat-resistant and acid-resistant type of protein. So, diba, do you remember, proteins are actually very sensitive to the change in temperature and the change in pH level. Kasi, pwede silang ma-denature. But the difference with your M proteins, even there is a change in the pH level and may change sa temperature, like the temperature increases, they are resistant to that. Therefore, they are very helpful when it comes to protecting your Streptococcus pyogenes. Kasi ang Streptococcus pyogene na bacteria, nagiging heat-resistant and acid-resistant din. They will not be killed by heat and acidic environments. Okay? So this protein, your M protein, aids in the attachment to host cells and also interferes with phagocytosis. And then another one, example is your Neisseria gonorrhoeae that uses fimbriae and a protein called OPA to attach to the host cells and induce endocytosis. What is endocytosis? Do you still remember? This is the example of an endocytosis. Ito siya, class. Yan. So, when you see endocytosis, this is a process by which a material is moved into your eukaryotic cell. Or in short, substances are brought into the cell. Pinapasok yung mga substances coming from the outside, papasok ng cell. Okay? So, that is one function of your protein OPA. Okay? Hindi ito yung Korean na OPA. OPA. Okay? To attach, okay, they help your Neisseria gonorrhoeae to attach to the host cell and induce endocytosis. So, your Neisseria gonorrhoeae enters your host cell through endocytosis. So, ang example kasi natin dito, class, liquid. So, you just imagine nyo na lang, palitan nyo yung liquid ng Neisseria gonorrhoeae bacteria. Okay? So, it enters your host cell through endocytosis with the help of your protein OPA. Okay? So, those are the proteins. Another one, okay, another component of your cell wall is the wax, okay, waxes. So, waxy substances in the cell wall of your Mycobacterium tuberculosis helps protect it from damage inside phagocytic cells so well that it can live and multiply inside the phagocyte. Now, this is very funny, no? Kasi nga, we are using the phagocytic cells of the host in order to engulf bacteria or bacterium para mapatay sila. Pero kapag merong wax, okay, wax component, yung cell wall ng bacteria, kahit na na-engulf na sila nitong phagocytic cells, they will not be destroyed. Rather, when they enter the phagocytic cell after silang na-engulf, they will multiply inside the phagocyte. So, ganun sila katindi kapag merong wax yung cell wall ng bacteria. So, always remember that. Kaya nga, diba, Mycobacterium tuberculosis causes your tuberculosis. So, mahirap siyang gamutin Kasi very resistant yung mga bacterium or bacteria because kahit na nakain na sila ng phagocytes, they will still live inside the phagocyte and multiply instead. So this is your Mycobacterium tuberculosis or TB. So saan mo makikita dyan ang waxy cell wall? This is your waxy cell wall formed from your mycolic acid. So meaning, ang mga bacteria na merong waxy cell wall, sila yung mga acid-fast bacteria. So, in relation to our laboratory. So, ayan o. Kapag merong waxy cell wall, they are actually acid-fast bacteria containing mycolic acid. And in the Ziehl-Neelsen stain, they will turn red. So, meaning, ang Mycobacterium tuberculosis ninyo will turn red in using the Ziehl-Neelsen stain. So, na-take out na natin ito, diba? Sa laboratory natin. So, just to relate. Next. Okay, is this still recording? I have to check every now and then kasi nakakakaba, no? Baka mamaya hindi naman gumagalaw yung ating PowerPoint. Okay, next. Let's go with the third component of your cell wall, the enzymes. Okay. Extracellular enzymes, you also call them as exoenzymes, are secreted into host tissues by bacterial cells. So, ano nga ba itong mga extracellular enzymes? When you say exoenzymes class, these are chemicals that are used to dissolve materials between cells and form or dissolve blood clots. Okay? Ginagamit itong mga exoenzyme to dissolve the materials holding your cells together, holding the cells of the host together. Okay? And pwede rin silang gamitin to form blood clots and also to dissolve blood clots. So this just depends on the type of enzyme. Okay? So let's take up the different types of enzymes. Number 1, you have your coagulases. Kapag sinabi mong coagulases, related siya sa term na coagulate. Anong nangyayari kapag nagkakaroon ng coagulation? 'Di ba? We are forming precipitate. Or you are forming a solid particle. Naalala ba yan? So, I hope you remember the term. Now, coagulases are bacterial enzymes that coagulate the fibrinogen in the blood. What is fibrinogen? Do you remember sa anatomy natin, physiology and anatomy? When you say fibrinogen, your fibrinogen is actually a plasma protein. Protein din siya, class. Produced by your liver. Now, the function of your fibrinogen is that it is converted, okay, by your coagulases into fibrin. Your fibrin are the threads, no, that form blood clot. So, para magkaroon ng blood clot, kailangan mong convert ang fibrinogen na protein into fibrin. And your fibrin will form the threads, okay? Later on forming your blood clot. So, yan o, by triggering the formation of fibrin threads and therefore a blood clot. Now, the bacteria may isolate themselves from the defenses of the host, and members of the genus Staphylococcus produce coagulases, and this may contribute to their tendency to form boils. Okay? So, ayan o. Let's take a look at this example. Polymer. Do you still remember the polymers, class? So, kapag may polymer ka and you used extracellular enzymes on them, the polymers will turn into monomer. Okay? So, example lang naman ito. Now, when meron din tayong tinatawag na intracellular enzymes, these are the ones that turns your monomers into polymer. Okay? Now, in this case, class, gamitan natin siya ng example, no? In this case, ano ang polymer mo? The polymer is the fibrinogen. Okay? Ang polymer mo dito sa coagulases is the fibrinogen. Now, with the use of coagulases, you will turn your fibrinogen into the monomer fibrin. Kuha. So, yan ang example natin dyan. So, this is your, okay, this is how your blood clot is formed. So, you have your singular red blood cells, and they will be clumped together using the threads of fibrin. Now, we also have, if we have coagulases, we also have kinases. Now, ito siya, kabaliktaran naman ang function niya doon sa coagulases natin. Your kinases are bacterial enzymes that break down fibrin, dissolving clots and enhancing the spread of infections. Streptococcus pyogenes produces an enzyme known as fibrinolysin or streptokinase. This enzyme has been used medically to dissolve harmful clots such as in heart attacks, and staphylococci produce staphylokinase. Now, specific tayo, kapag Streptococcus pyogenes, ang napoproduce niya na kinases is your fibrinolysin or streptokinase. Kapag Staphylococcus naman tayo, or staphylococci, ang napoproduce niya is staphylokinase. Magkaiba yung term, okay, for the different types of microorganism. Now, kabaliktaran, no, dito sa kinases, in here, your fibrin is dissolved, no? Or you are dissolving the clots formed and enhancing the speed of infection. So, kung gusto mong bumuo ng blood clot, ang gagamitin is coagulases. Kapag gusto mong i-dissolve naman ang blood clot, you will use kinases. So, do you see here? Kapag coagulation, from fibrinogen to fibrin clot. Kapag we are using fibrinolysin, then you will use, or if you want to dissolve the blood clot, then you will use fibrinolysin or streptokinase or staphylokinase. And that will later on result to wound healing. Okay, so ito yung sa natin dati, anatomy and physiology. Now, iba yung concept natin kasi dito sa anatomy and physiology class, the formation and breakdown of blood clots leads to wound healing. But in microbiology, the formation of blood clot and the dissolving of blood clot is used, no, as a mechanism by your bacteria in order for them to survive. So, for example, dito, when you are dissolving clots, you're actually enhancing the spread of infection. Usually kasi class, ang blood clot natin, it is used to to confine the infection in one certain area. Okay, para matuyo yung sugat, hindi na magkaroon ng infection. Now, ang nangyayari kapag gumagamit ng kinases na enzymes yung mga bacteria natin, nadi-dissolve yung blood clot, hindi na contain yung contamination in one particular area, kaya kumakalat siya. Okay? So, they are using the formation of blood clot and the dissolving of blood clots on their own on their own survival mechanism. Okay, next. We also have the enzyme hyaluronidase. Now, this is an enzyme that breaks down hyaluronic acid. Your hyaluronic acid class is actually, this is an polysaccharide that forms the ground substance of some of the connective tissues of the body. Okay, where are we? Okay, yun. So, ginagamit itong hyaluronic acid ninyo to hold certain cells of the body. For example natin dyan is the connective tissue. So, basic component siya ng connective tissue ng body natin. Now, how do your hyaluronic acid, paano siya paano siya nabe-break down? Okay, through the use of hydrolysis. So kapag when you are using the hyaluronidase class, you are hydrolyzing your hyaluronic acid. Now, ayan digestion action is involved and in the tissue blackening of infected wound. So this helps the bacterial infection spread through tissue. So itong hyaluronidase ninyo class, siya yung nagko-cause ng blackening, okay, surrounding the wounds. Okay? So kapag may nakita kayong blackening in the tissue around your infected wounds, that means that the bacteria that are found in your wound is secreting hyaluronidase. Okay? Nagsisecrete siya ng hyaluronidase para ma-dissolve niya yung surrounding tissue para mas mag-spread pa yung infection. Okay? Ito yung ginagamit ng bacteria natin na enzymes class para mas mapalawak nila yung infection nila sa body ng host nila. So, if napansin ninyo, if you observe that your wound is just a tiny speck today and then tomorrow lumaki na siya, that means the bacteria is secreting the enzyme hyaluronidase to break down the tissues surrounding the wound. So, ayan, the enzyme may also be used in injections. Ginagamit din siya medically class to promote spread of a drug through a tissue. It is produced by some streptococci and some clostridia. Now, do you get it? Kung anong function ng hyaluronidase niyo? Pasensya na class na talaga ako sa pronunciation nito. Nahihirapan si ma'am na i-pronounce itong oh my god, nabubulol ako. So, ayan. Kapag sinabi mong digestion of the basic material of your connective tissue, ang involved dyan is your hyaluronidase. Next. So, ayan diba? Dapat kasi class, kapag hindi contaminated yung wound, hindi siya nagkakaroon ng discoloration around the wound at tuyo siya. Now, in this case, you see here, so ito yun the white portion surrounding your wound is being broken down by the enzyme secreted by your bacteria. So, ayan, nagkakaroon ng degradation. So, kapag lumalaki yung sugat ninyo, maglagay na ng gamot. Huwag nang hayaan na mas lumaki pa siya. Okay? Next, the fourth type of enzyme is your collagenase. Now, this enzyme breaks down the protein collagen. Ito naman, collagen mismo ang inaatake niya, Yung isa, ang inaatake niya is hyaluronic acid that, holds your connective tissue. On the other hand, itong collagenase natin, ang inaatake niya is collagen. It is breaking down collagen. So, when there is a breaking down of collagen, this allows the spread of infection through your muscles and other body tissues. Bakit? Kasi ang collagen ninyo, this forms the muscles and other body organs. Okay? So, siya ang basic component ng muscles. Hindi lang ng connective tissue, but also other body organs and muscles. Now, it is produced by several species of Clostridium and plays a role in gas gangrene. So, kapag meron kang gangrene class in any part of your body, that means there is a presence of bacteria such as Clostridium that releases collagenase to break down your collagen. Kaya, dahan-dahang nagra-rot yung body part na merong gangrene. Okay? And then we have the fifth type of enzyme, IgA proteases. So, ano ba yung IgA proteases natin? They destroy antibodies. Okay, and they are produced by certain species of Neisseria. For example, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, Another one, Neisseria meningitis, and other more microbes that infects the central nervous system. Okay, so most of the microbes that damages the central nervous system, meron silang IgA proteases. Para saan ba ito? Okay. As a defense against adherence of your pathogens to the mucosal surfaces, your body will produce a class of antibody which is called IgA antibodies. Okay? Ang IgA antibodies natin, they prevent the adherence of your pathogens to the mucosal surfaces. Saan makikita ang mucosal surfaces? Sa organs. Okay? Now, in order for your pathogens to actually invade the mucosal surfaces of your organs, dapat meron silang mechanism against your IgA antibodies. So they release your IgA proteases. So ang magkalaban dito, IgA antibodies produced by the host versus your IgA proteases produced naman by, tama ba yung sinabi ko? IgA, this is between, or the fight is between IgA antibodies caused by the body of the host and versus your IgA proteases that is secreted by the pathogenic bacteria. Okay? So, next. Let's go with how bacterial pathogens damage host cells. Okay, let's continue. Okay, many microbes entering a host are destroyed by lysosomes or pwede ring, on the other hand, phagocytes. Okay? When there are microbes entering your body, ang unang magre-reaction is phagocytes. Now, if the microbes manage to avoid your phagocytes and lysosomes, they may cause damage in 4 main ways. So these are the 4 main ways in which your pathogens causes damage to the host cells. Number 1, through using the host's nutrients. So alam na natin, we already know this. Number 2, causing direct damage in the immediate area of the invasion. So, kung saan sila, the first area or part of the body that they enter, they will immediately cause damage to that. So, number 3, by producing toxins that may be transported by blood and lymph to damage sites far from the original invasion. So, ito siya, class. The production of your toxins is one way to spread the infection and damage. So, after nila ma-invade yung immediate area kung saan sila unang nakalapag, they will later on reach out to other parts of the host body by the transport of their toxins through the blood and the lymph. And then number 4, by causing the host to react with a hypersensitivity reaction. So, itong hypersensitivity reaction, this will vary on different types of host. Okay? Hindi lahat ng host is pare-pareho ng reaction to presence of bacterial pathogens. Pwede ngang iba, agad-agad magkakaroon ng hypersensitivity reaction while others may not. So, let's take up first the use of host nutrients. Some of your pathogens produce proteins called siderophores which steal iron from transport proteins and make it available to the microbe. Now, let's talk about the need of the iron. Okay, bakit, ano ba yung importance ng iron? Bakit siya napag-usapan? Actually, class, your iron is required for the growth of most pathogens. Kinakailangan siya ng mga pathogen for their growth. However, the concentration of your iron inside the human body is actually fairly low. Hindi siya ganun karami. Hindi ganun karami ang iron na makikita sa human body. Bakit? Wala kang makikita na free iron particle or molecule in the human body because most iron are tightly bound to your iron transport protein. Ito siya. Your iron transport proteins bind to your iron particles or molecules. Now, ano yung mga types ng transport proteins natin? So, nagmo-move ba? Okay. Ayan. The 4 examples of transport proteins or iron transport proteins class are number 1, lactoferrin. 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 Number 2, you have your transferrin. 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 Number 3, you also have your ferritin. Ferritin. And then, number 4, ang pinakasikat sa lahat, you have your hemoglobin. Okay, yung 4 na yan, your lactoferrin, transferrin, ferritin, and hemoglobin are 4 types of iron transport proteins. So, sila yung nagdadala ng mga iron in the different parts of the body. Kaya, wala kang nakikitang free-floating na iron, okay, inside the body. So, since need ng mga pathogenic microorganisms ang iron for their growth, they need to steal the iron from the iron transport proteins through the use of your siderophores. Okay, so yan ang use ng siderophores natin. You have here the example. So, this is your bacterium. Bacterial receptor niya yung gray, and then siderophores yung ating color blue, and ang yellow is ang iron. So parang kumbaga pa, it uses the siderophores as a handle to capture the ions from the transport proteins. Okay? Your siderophores, when pathogens need your iron, your siderophores will be released and they will bind to the iron even more tightly, forming iron siderophore complex. So, ang tawag mo na dito ngayon, dyan, sa dalawang parts na yan, the blue part and the yellow or orange part, ang tawag mo dyan is iron siderophore complex. Okay? And then, the binding in your iron siderophore complex is, more tight, mas mas masikip kaysa doon sa bonding niya sa iron transport protein. So, hindi na naaagaw niya yung iron from the iron transport protein kasi mas mas tight yung bonding nila with the siderophores. Okay? That is the using of the host nutrients, for example, the iron. Number 2, we have direct damage. Now, your pathogens can enter the host cells and multiply, killing the host cells and moving on to new host cells. So, kapag pumasok ang mga microorganisms inside your host cell, they will cause direct damage. Why? Kasi mostly, when your pathogens are moving out of the cell class, they will cause rupture. Okay? Rupture of the host cell. So, kapag nagkaroon ng rupture of the host cell, that will kill the cells of the host. So, direct damage na yun siya. Okay? Now, some bacteria can induce host cells to engulf them by a process resembling phagocytosis, but the bacteria are not then destroyed as usually occurs. So, ang iba, nagpapakain sila sa mga phagocytes but they are not killed in the process. In fact, they can move through the original host cell and cause it to release them into deeper layers of cells by a form of exocytosis. Ano naman ang exocytosis? Kabaliktaran ng endocytosis. So, if ang endocytosis, a certain particle is entering the cell, diba? In your exocytosis, this is a form of an active transport. So, meaning, this requires energy. Naalala nyo pa ba yan? Active transport and inactive transport, do you remember? Kapag active transport, it uses energy for the transportation. And one example niyan is exocytosis. In exocytosis, cells transport molecules out of the cell, palabas ng cell. Itong example niya. Galing sa loob, it will transfer it to the outside of the cell. And this process actually needs what? It needs energy. Kaya siya active transport. Okay? So, sabi niya dito, yung ibang microorganisms daw, nagpapakain sila sa phagocytes, and then they will use the phagocytic cells as a transport para they will be transported into deeper layers of the body. Okay? Tapos, spread na sila sa ibang parts. Kasi nga, lumabas sila through exocytosis. So, they are very, sly. Most of your pathogens are very sly microorganisms. Marami silang types ng transport na ginagamit para kumalat throughout the body of the host. Now, some bacteria release enzymes to allow penetration, and some use their own motility to enter. This penetration may damage the host cell sometimes kasi nga they might rupture the host cell. Also, waste products of the microbe may damage the host cell. So, if nagkaroon ng instances that hindi sila nag-cause ng rupture of the host cell will still die because of the increase of waste products na naiwan ng mga pathogens inside the host cell. So, that is direct damage. Next, let's go with the production of toxins. Now, your production of toxins is the main way a bacteria can cause harm. So, ito yung matindi niya na damage sa host cells natin, ang production ng toxins. Because, most of the time, ito talaga yung nagkakos ng disease. Now, toxins are poisonous substances produced by certain microbes. Not all microbes class can cause poisonous toxins, okay? The ability to produce a toxin is called toxigenicity. Okay, and then toxins may be carried far from the site of invasion by the use of blood and lymph. Kaya this is why toxins are very damaging and dangerous. Kasi they do not affect the immediate area. Rather, they can be transported to other parts of the body to cause disease. So, natatransport itong ating toxins by the use of blood and lymph. Now, various toxins may cause fever, cardiovascular disturbances, diarrhea, and shock. They can inhibit protein synthesis, destroy blood vessels, and disrupt the nervous system. Siguro ito yung destroy blood vessels that might cause heart attack or cardiovascular diseases, and they might disrupt the nervous system that will affect your brain, okay, the cognitive ability of a person. Now, about 220 bacterial toxins are known, and 40% of them damage eukaryotic plasma membranes. Toxemia refers to the presence of toxins in the blood. So, na-discuss na natin yan before. So, one type of your they call this toxin class is your exotoxin. So, actually, dalawa ito, no? Endotoxin yung isa. Pero ang na-include dito sa inyong course pack is only exotoxin. So, let's take that up. So, your exotoxins, these are produced inside some bacteria as they grow as part of their metabolism. Okay, so when bacteria grow, kailangan din nila ng metabolism, and one product of that is your exotoxin. And your exotoxins are released into the surrounding. So, paano sila ma-release? Pwede ring through lysis of bacterial cells. Most of your exotoxins class, they will be released kapag namatay yung bacterial cell natin, kapag nag-rupture yung bacterial cell. So, the exotoxins will be released. Now, they are proteins. So, ang exotoxins inyo, proteins din sila. And many are enzymes that catalyze only certain biochemical reaction. Karamihan ng mga exotoxins ninyo are enzymes, meaning pinipili lang nila yung biochemical reactions that they are acting upon. Many bacteria that produce exotoxins are gram-positive, but some gram-negative bacteria also produce them. The genes of the production of your toxin are mostly carried on by bacterial plasmids or phages. Ano nga yung plasmids natin? 'Di ba? So, if this is the bacterial cell, you have the bacterial DNA, and you have the circular genetic material, which are the plasmids. So, 'di ba, your plasmids are the separated genetic material. So, your plasmids actually carry the genes for the production of your exotoxins. Okay? Where are we? Another one that carries the genes for the production of exotoxin is your phages. Phages, short for bacteriophages. Do you remember that? Bacteriophages. Ano nga yung bacteriophages? These are viruses that can infect bacterial cells. Do you remember? So, yan. Bacteriophages. Pwede yan silang mag-carry ng genes for producing exotoxins. Now, exotoxins are soluble in body fluids. So, pwede silang, they are easily soluble to blood and pwede ring lymph. Any type of body fluid. Yan, so they easily enter blood and carried throughout the body. So, yan yung reason kung bakit siya madaling ikalat sa katawan. Okay? Kasi soluble siya sa body fluids natin. And remember, body fluids are flowing throughout our body. Exotoxins work by destroying particular parts of the host cells or by inhibiting certain metabolic functions. So they are highly specific in their effects, and they may be placed into mali ito sa course pack ninyo 3, dapat 5. They are placed into 5 groups according to the type of tissue they affect. Number 1, you have your cytotoxins. Cytotoxins, cyto meaning cell. So this will kill a variety of your host cells or affect their function. So sa host cells ito sila. On the other hand, you also have your neurotoxins. So, coming from the word neuro, meaning it affects or interferes with nerve impulse transmission sa central nervous system. Number 3, you have your enterotoxins. Kapag sinabing entero, meaning sa gastrointestinal tract. Okay? Digestive system. So, it affects the lining of your gastrointestinal tract in the digestive system. Number 4, leukotoxin. Leuko, coming from leukocytes or red blood cells. So, meaning, your leukotoxins attack your leukocytes. And then, we also have our correction class leukocytes, white blood cells. Okay, erythrocytes yung ating red blood cells. So, leukocytes are the white blood cells or the phagocytic cells in your body that is acting as a defense for pathogens. And then you also have your cardiotoxins that attack the heart, coming from the word cardio. Okay? So those are the 5 groups, that 5 groups of exotoxins that the body might encounter. Okay, let's continue. Now, bacterial exotoxins are the most powerful poisonous substances known. 1 milligram of your botulinum exotoxin could kill 1 million guinea pig. So, diseases caused by bacteria that produce exotoxins can be caused by tiny traces of exotoxins. So, ano ba yung dahilan nito? Okay? 'Di ba? When we say exotoxins, they are said to be enzymes. Now, because of the enzymatic nature of your exotoxins class, kahit na maliit lang na amount ng exotoxin ang present, okay, it they are quite harmful because they can be used over and over again. So, kahit na sabi dito, 'di ba, 1 milligram lang for example ng botulinum exotoxin, but it can kill 1 million guinea pigs. Why? Because, 'di ba, dahil enzyme sila. Remember, 'di ba, enzymes are not used or they are not used in a chemical reaction, 'di ba? Do you remember? Kapag sinulat mo yung chemical reaction using an enzyme, your enzyme will not be placed on the product side or on the reactant side. Hindi siya nako-consume. Rather, the enzyme can be used again and again and again. So, even if there is only a small speck of exotoxin present, magamit siya ng magamit ng paulit-ulit. Okay? So, yung effect niya is napakalaki. Okay? Kasi hindi nga siya nako-consume in a chemical reaction. So, ganyan kapag, yun yung perks, no, if a certain toxin has an enzymatic nature, it will not be consumed in a chemical reaction, so hindi siya nauubos. Ginagamit lang siya ng paulit, ng paulit, ng paulit. Okay? Now, the bacteria themselves do not cause the signs and symptoms of the disease. It is the poison they produce and release into the body of the host that causes the disease. For example, the wound-infected Clostridium tetani may be smaller than a pinprick, but the organism produces neurotoxin that can be fatal. So, naapektuhan niya ang central nervous system. Kahit napakaliit pa nung sugat mo, if infected yan siya ng Clostridium tetani, which will later on release, no, exotoxin or yung neurotoxin natin, then it will still have an effect to your central nervous system. Okay? So, one example natin dyan, your exotoxins are very disease-specific. For example, sabi nga niya, hindi yung presence ng bacteria ang nag-cause ng disease, rather the poisonous toxin that it releases. So, for example, ang botulism natin, class. Your botulism is due to ingestion of the exotoxin, not a bacterial infection. So, ang botulism, this is a result when you are eating, they call this, not properly canned goods. Do you remember? So, diba, if may presence ng bacteria doon that will release the exotoxin for botulism, so, hindi siya bacterial infection kasi hindi yung bacteria ang nag-cause ng disease. Rather, yung exotoxin that it released. Now, for example, another example is your staphylococcal food poisoning. Your staphylococcal food poisoning is an intoxication, okay, and not an infection. Kasi ang food poisoning natin, you are eating a food containing toxins coming from your staphylococci. Hindi yung staphylococci mismo ang nag-infect sa'yo. Hindi siya infection. Rather, intoxication ang food poisoning. So, that is just an example. Okay? Now, in response to the presence of your toxin, ano ang ginagawa ng body mo? It produces antibodies called antitoxins. Your antitoxins, they provide immunity to exotoxins. Okay, ang kalaban ng exotoxins are the antitoxins. And compared to the exotoxins, which are enzymes, your antitoxins are antibodies. Your antitoxins will combine with the toxin and make it harmless. We can take active toxins and treat them by the heat or exposure to chemicals such as formaldehyde. So, another way to fight, no, your exotoxins is by doing heating or exposure to chemicals. So, ito sila ng mga processes that will inactivate your exotoxins. So, i-inactivate mo sila para hindi na sila maging harmful. Ito yung process niya. For example, antitoxin RNA. So, antibody ito. Ito yung toxin mo. So, with the use of your antitoxin antibody, which is an RNA dito sa example natin, it will combine with your toxin and will form the toxin-antitoxin complex, which is inactive. Okay? So, ganyan yung kanyang mechanism or process of making your exotoxins inactive using the antitoxins. So, pwede mo rin silang gawing inactive through the use of heat and exposure to chemicals. Now, ang nangyayari doon sa use naman ng heat and chemicals class, this makes your exotoxins harmless, but still, you are able to trigger the immune response that will cause the production of antibodies. So, ang tawag mo dito sa kanila is deactivated toxins, which you can also call toxoids. Okay? At yung toxoids natin ang ginagamit sa vaccination. Why? Your toxoids will not cause harm kapag na-inject sila sa human body, but they will still trigger the production of your antibodies, which are the antitoxins. So, one example of this is your diphtheria and tetanus vaccines. Okay? So, I hope naintindihan yan siya. Okay, so dito, we will end our first part in here. On the second video, we will be discussing about the exotoxins classified based on their structure and function. Okay? So, thank you for watching. I hope that you've taken down notes. See you on the next video or the last video discussion of Chapter 9 for the finals. Thank you, class. Bye!